It was truly disturbing to watch as that Trump supporting mob stormed the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Now, Councilmember Jawando, as you watched this unfold on television, explain to me how you felt in that moment.
Well, a lot of feelings, and I'm still processing them. I think one of the things I said in the moment was, having worked on Capitol Hill for more than 10 years and on the House and the Senate side, just understanding the gravity of what we were there to do. We were there to help the American people to pass laws and bills and authorize monies to support Americans. And that's an institution that's been there for hundreds of years. And the sanctity and kind of the reverence we had for going on the floor, it wasn't something you did a lot as a staffer. It was very well guarded. You needed to have special access and privileges. And just to see it being desecrated in the way that it was, and the lack of security while members of Congress were in there fulfilling their constitutional duties, which are the basis of our representative democracy that we live in, that people fight and die for. It just was all wrapped up together. It's the symbol of what's right with America. And also at the same time, you were seeing what's wrong with America. And so it was just it was emotional, more emotional than I thought it would be, because, it's a building, but just what it represented. And then obviously when you layer on what many of the folks the insurrectionists that charged that building were, being a majority white audience, white group, having the Confederate flag and old versions of the American flag, for slavery times, and just what they were representing, that part was hard to handle too. And just in the lack of response and police response, and how we know it would have been different, I'm going down the list here, but it's just, so a lot of emotions, and the fact that it was incited by our president, the president of the United States, who earlier that day and months before and weeks before encouraged folks to come and go crazy and go down and walk down the street and let them, and incited violence on members of Congress. So it's just unprecedented in so many ways, but also emotional, just deeply emotional, because of the time that, I spent there working.
Now, you sent out a tweet that read, "We need a full and complete investigation into how and why our law enforcement agencies, despite individual acts of bravery, were entirely unprepared to protect the lives of members of Congress and those who work in the Capitol. This is not over." Can you explain to me what you meant?
This is a branch of government, right? We have three branches of government in the United States. This is where one of them does their work, and it's the People's House in the Senate. And they were discharging members of Congress their constitutional responsibility to certify the electoral results. And the fact that that building wasn't protected, and that the National Guard had not been called, and that our Capitol Police didn't have either the orders or the support. You saw these pictures of Capitol Police taking pictures with folks, or running away from them because they didn't have the backup. You had everything happening in between there. That was a failure and you've since seen my former boss, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, call for the resignation of the Sergeant at Arms and the Chief of the Capitol Police. You've seen Senator Chuck Schumer do the same. They should have expected, with what Donald Trump had been saying for weeks and literally for years, and inciting that violence, that mob, we needed to be better prepared. And you've seen the juxtaposition in pictures of, Black Lives Matter protests that were largely peaceful, where you have much more presence and kind of control than in that situation. And so it was just uncalled for. And "this is not over" means that this was an unorganized mob, right? And they may have all been there because they were mad about election results and have been fed all those lies, but they were unorganized. Imagine if you have some of these groups that have been training and are more heavily armed, and if they would have breached as easily as this group did, the havoc and the death and the destruction and violence they could have caused. And you're already seeing on web chats and things that, people are coming back and they want to make something happen on inauguration. So that's what I said. That's why I said this is not over. And so not only do we need an investigation, of what happened and why it happened, and if people enabled it or aided and abetted it, or didn't, or purposely didn't put the right security in place. Did the president delay the deployment of the National Guard in D.C. because Mayor Bowser can't do it herself because they're not a state? We need to know all that timing. We also need to be prepared to protect the Capitol and the men and women and children that are in that building. And thank God, most of the staff, due to COVID, were not there. At any given day, there's tens of thousands of people in that complex. You know, staff, children, there's daycare. You think of how much worse it could have been. But that's what I meant by that, is that there was a failure that day.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add in regard to all of this?
I would just say that, I've said that, as many have, I think at this point, that the responsibility for this lies right at the feet of the president, but he couldn't have done it alone. The enablers in Congress, many of who even after everything that happened came back in that chamber and still sought to sow doubt about the election results and to disenfranchise people, which was the reason that group was there, right? So you can't disconnect that. And so the Republican members of Congress and the president, of course, they are directly involved and they should be held accountable too. And anyone in a position of public leadership needs to say that. And we need to, this cannot become normal, and because unless you nip it in the bud, those groups and groups like that feel empowered, and it will happen again. And that's why that's an important message as well.